Shan, how you going? Thanks for being here.
Good. Yeah, thanks, mate.
Straight into it. You didn't study Islam to find truth. You studied Islam to dismantle it.
Yeah.
How did you end up fully going the other way?
That is a long story. So,
Good. We have all the time in the world.
All right. So I think, well, we kind of jumped in the middle of my story. So I'll go from where we jumped in about me looking into Islam. The reason why I wanted to dismantle it is because my mom had passed away, right? And it wasn't purely Islam that I was having an issue with. I was having an issue with every organized religion, right? It was because I dedicated my life to a particular religion and stuck my whole life with that and did everything according to that religion, Christianity we're talking about, whereas all my other friends were doing other stuff. And I felt that I had been, I felt at that time that I'd been duped, right? And so that anger was directed towards every organized religion. My friend, very close friend of mine at that time, was Muslim. And his dad had passed away, and he was one of the few people I was ranting to about, I don't believe in religion, I don't believe in any organized religion. And he said, well, you can't blame God. These things happen. People live and they die. And it was at that moment that I got this fixation on Islam. I was like, well, dude, I wasted my religion being a Christian. I wasted my life being a Christian. You're wasting your life being a Muslim. Let me prove it wrong.
I want to just interrupt you there.
Yeah.
I find this concept, wasted my life being Christian, wasted your life being Muslim, interesting. Why did you think at that point you had wasted your life?
But it goes to how old I was. I was 21 at the time, right?
Okay.
So from the age of, since the age of whenever till about 20 years old, I lived the life of a good kid.
Okay.
Right. Didn't go clubbing.
Yep.
Didn't do any drinks. Didn't hang out with girls much.
But do you think that could have been because you're subcontinental and, our parents are traditionally very strict?
We're talking about Sri Lanka. I was in Sri Lanka.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So they're all subcontinent.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is Sri Lanka high school.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Look, I'm not. It's not the standard of the Western, within reason. But look, all my other friends were doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't. And the reason I didn't was I thought of myself as a good Christian kid, right? And I stuck to the biblical rules and stuck to what the church said and what the pastor said and what my mom wanted. And suddenly my whole world turned upside down. And I was thinking, well, you know what? I could have done all that stuff. There's a second part to that as well. Again, the context here was my uncle, that's my mom's brother, was atheist.
Okay.
And when my mom passed away, my uncle who was atheist dealt with that death much better than I did.
Interesting.
And I'm thinking, well, he didn't have faith, but he prepared for it and he dealt with that better. Me, on the other hand, was adamant that God was going to heal my mom. And that disappointment was what really got to me. And I was like, well, if that's what happened being a Christian, that must be the case with every organized religion. And so when my friend said this, it started kind of like zoned into Islam. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove Islam wrong to you.
Okay, so it was
I'm going to save you.
It was an academic kind of exercise, I suppose, for you to try and prove it wrong.
I think at some point it became academic.
Yeah.
Probably, it was about a 2-year research. So halfway through it became academic. But initially it was just emotional. It was purely anger and emotion.
And you said atheism here. Were you a staunch atheist at the time? Or was it more that you had drifted away from the church and its teachings?
I reckon if you talked to me at the time, I'd say I was a staunch atheist. But the reality was I wasn't.
Yeah. So you weren't one of those kind of new atheists, as they call them, part of the movement where Richard Dawkins is your God and you go around preaching the God delusion.
No. I think in reality I was agnostic. There'd be many times where, just before a uni exam or an assignment, I'd catch myself praying and then I'd say, shut up, Shan, you don't believe in God, why are you praying?
Yeah.
So I don't think so. I think when you're brought up in a faith for so long, it sticks to you in one form or the other.
Do you think your actions and your beliefs at that point in time were maybe a rebellion into your upbringing? So were you born Christian? Were you pushed down that path from your family? Or?
No, so we have to skip back in chronologically.
This is great. This is like a Guy Ritchie movie where we jump around.
To jump around.
Yeah, this makes things interesting.
Well, let me start from the start then.
Okay.
And then you can jump in and jump me
so
around.
So let's before we do that, for our audience, just tell everyone your name.
Yeah, cool. So my name is, in Australia, I use Shan. But anyone who knows Sri Lankans, I have 5 names, so for 5 parts.
Excellent. So you could be a Sri Lankan cricket spinner.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So let's go back to the beginning. So you said you were Buddhist?
So I was born to a Buddhist family, right?
Yeah. What percentage of Sri Lankans are Buddhist?
70 to 75%.
Okay, so the majority.
Majority,
Yeah.
vast
What's the breakdown of religion in Sri Lanka? Just so we have some context.
Ooh, so look, this is just off the top of my head. So if someone out there's going to Google it and quote me as I'm wrong,
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
apologies,
or let them. Yeah, if he's wrong, please comment below and let us know. Thank you.
So approximately 70 to 75% are Sinhalese who are majority Buddhist. Some Sinhalese are Christian as well, but majority are Buddhist.
Yep.
The second big majority is Hindus.
Yep.
I wouldn't put a figure there, but the second largest majority is Hindus.
Yeah.
After that, you have the Catholics.
Yep.
Catholics are mainly Sinhalese, but Catholics. And then next to that would be the Muslims.
Okay.
And then the smallest majority would be the Christians. Now, when I say Christians, I'm talking about Protestant Christians.
Yeah, Protestants.
Kind of different to Catholic.
Yeah, I get it.
Christians,
I
you
understand.
get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's generally how Sri Lanka's made up of.
Okay.
I was born into the majority Sinhalese Buddhist family.
Yep.
Funnily enough, on my dad's side, I'm quite aristocratic. On my mom's side, I'm quite communist. My grandfather was one of the founding members of the Communist Party.
Oh wow!
Yeah. He went to USSR and met the secretary of Russia, and even to this day, I think if you go to the Sri Lanka Communist Party headquarters, you'll see a picture of him.
Wow.
So so I was born into that kind of family. My dad's side. Well, my dad, actually, let's just say my dad's side. My dad was not very religious either way. He was pretty chill.
Is Buddhism, though, as it's practiced in Sri Lanka, is it more of a religion or a philosophy or a way of life? You know, because it
depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I don't know much about Buddhism, but from what I've seen, most Buddhists don't regard it as a religion per se. It's more just this kind of like philosophy of how they do things.
I think vast majority in Sri Lanka, the average Sri Lankan will see it as a religion.
Okay.
They do the rituals, they do the processes. They think that if they do a particular ritual, a particular act will happen, or a good deed or a bad deed, like other religions. I think if you spoke to maybe perhaps some clergy or certain intellectuals, they may say it's a philosophy. But for most majority, I think in Sri Lanka, it's a religion.
Okay.
So I was born into that, Buddhist religious family. My dad's side, my dad not very religious. My mom at some point was quite religious, but my mom had this personality, those personalities that was always spiritual, always looking for something, always trying to connect with something beyond. That was my mom. And I reckon I probably got that from her. When I was about 4 years old, my family migrated to Australia.
Okay.
Right? They got the PR. It was back in the days when you came into the airport and they stamped PR.
Yeah, it's easier.
Yeah. So we got stamped PR, came into Australia, and my parents needed to put me in a school. Don't ask me why they didn't put me in a public school. I assume they wanted to put me in more of a private school for education or whatever.
Have your parents, would you say your parents value academics and schooling?
I think here's where we get the subcontinent side coming in. Yes, academics, discipline. I feel that probably they were a bit scared to put me in a public school.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to put more in a private school, despite the fact that when we first moved here, we barely had any money, right? We were living on Vinnies at that time, as most immigrants generally did. But somehow they prioritized my school, and not somehow. I think most subcontinent families do that. They prioritize their kids' school. And so they put me in a private school. But the problem for them was trying to find a private school. Every school at that time had already started. I think I was halfway through the term. And my parents were driving past this school one day, and there's kids playing outside. And my mom sees them and says, "Oh, that's a nice uniform. Let's go talk to them." And it happens to be a Catholic school.
Yep.
For anyone out there in Sydney, so it was St. Aidan's in Maroubra.
Okay, St. Aidan's in Maroubra.
It's still there. You can still Google it.
Okay.
Still, that school's still there, and it looks pretty much the same when I was there, when I was 5 years old. So we went there. They said, "Look, sure, we can take him in, but he has to be baptized as a Catholic."
Oh, okay.
So that was the condition, right?
Yeah.
To join the school, I had to be baptized as a Catholic.
Yep.
I think my parents were like,
whatever.
Yeah,
chuck some water on your head.
Education's the first thing, right? Priority. So they baptized me as a Catholic. I remember that was one of my first memories, actually, getting baptized. They put some water on my head. I kept dropping the candle. I nearly burned the carpet.
Yeah.
My mom yelled at me. I have memories of that. And I went to the Catholic school, and I saw, even though I was born to a Buddhist family, I guess I actually grew up as a Catholic.
Okay.
That's my first sense of religion and what belongs to me.
Yep.
So I went to the Catholic school, and I was always the top of the class in religious studies. Always right at the top. The sisters, the nuns who were there, loved me. The priests loved me. Actually, one of the priests actually came to my mom once and said, "Look, when he gets old enough, would you be happy to send him to a seminary? We'll get him a scholarship. We'll send him to a seminary.
Oh, wow.
Make him a priest." And I think that's where my mom was like, "No, we're drawing the line here."
Yeah, okay,
right? I was happy for him to be baptized.
So she was happy to play the fake Catholic.
Yeah.
But not,
for the
this is
time
going a bit
being.
too far.
This is getting real.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's why I said I think I got that spiritual aspect from my mom. It was always there. And my mom was interested as well. She would ask me questions. Remember, I'm 5 years old at this time, 6 years old. And I had this little picture Bible that I show and I talked to her about it. And so as far as I was concerned, I was Catholic. My mom was neither here nor there. My dad didn't care. And then, we went through a series of being Mormon as well. My mom actually got baptized as a Mormon because one day the Seventh-day Adventists came in. Sorry, not the Seventh-day Adventists. The Mormons, the Church of Latter-day Saints came and knocked on our door. And so she decided to get baptized as a Mormon.
And what inspired? That's interesting because they knock everywhere. Was it like how long did she research for?
I think my mom always had this longing to know the truth.
Yeah.
She was one of those people that was just not satisfied with a philosophy. She always thought there was a God. She always felt that she had to belong to a way of life.
Yep.
And I think when these guys knocked on the door, she was like, brilliant. I've been thinking about this. Tell me everything you know. So she got baptized as a Mormon. That didn't last very long. Anyways, fast forward to, I think, the age of 9, my mom and I moved back to Sri Lanka. We moved back to Sri Lanka and my mom was a doctor. And one day...
Oh, your mom was a doctor?
My mom was a
Okay, so that explains the whole academic...
Oh,
there you go.
My mom was a doctor.
Yeah.
My dad's an engineer.
Yeah,
I'm a lawyer. I got the three.
Wow.
The three
Doctor, engineer, lawyer in the family. Done. Yeah.
All I'm missing is an accountant.
Yeah. Look, accountants are people who weren't good enough for
Doctor, lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to say anything, give myself trouble with some of my accountant friends.
They know it. They all know it. You know, every accountant really wanted to be an investment banker or a doctor, but they didn't.
So that does where the education comes from. But my mom was a doctor at this hospital, and one of the people who was visiting a patient there was a lady from Methodist Church. And I think my mom, being my mom, started talking about religion, and my son went to a Catholic school, and I want to know more, etc. And she said, "Well, come to the Methodist Church." And that started several weeks of me being dragged to the Methodist Church on Wednesdays after school, which I detested because I was tired. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Methodist church, but they have these big organs and they play very old school song hymns, and not really the most fun place for.
Yeah, I mean, I went to an Anglican school, so we had an organ and stuff there. Is it similar? Yeah, okay.
So yeah, for I'm talking about a 12-year-old now.
Yeah,
not the place I wanted to be, but. What's interesting is, as a Catholic, I got the biblical foundation quite well. Right?
Yeah.
I understood the biblical stories. Jesus,
I think biblical studies in Catholicism is very...
Right, I got that pretty well. As going to a Methodist church, I kind of got this view of the connection a human being can have with his creator. I didn't get that from the Catholic Church.
Do you think that's because in Catholicism, everything is done via a priest or the Pope, or they say the Pope is a direct line to God, and they kind of detach your personal relationship with God and they do it via a intermediary?
Look, if I was to psychoanalyze my 5-year-old self, I'd say yes.
Okay.
Mind you, I was 5 years old. I don't know if I was that or if I just didn't understand it. But I think at the age of 12, and this is why when I look back and when I finish my story, you might kind of understand, I actually do feel that God or Allah took me to the exact steps where I was supposed to be at the exact right time.
Yeah.
As a Catholic, I got the foundations of the biblical stories and the stories of the prophets and all that.
Yeah.
As a Methodist, I awakened, despite how boring the sessions were, I awakened to the idea that I could have a personal connection with the Creator. And so we went to the Methodist Church for a while. And then this is where really the turning point happened. When I was about 16 years old, we moved houses. And our next door neighbor was full gospel evangelical Protestant. Now, does that make any sense to you when I say that?
Yeah. That does. I mean, the evangelical Christians are a lot of the American ones, really, over the top ones. Hillsong,
right. We call them happy clappers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Music, fireworks, laser lights, the fun church.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Methodist, it was the fun church.
Yeah, I think there's one here actually. Every Sunday I see them.
Oh, yeah?
It doesn't look like a church, but it's, every Sunday I drive past and I see there's always people there and there's always a barbecue happening and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, the fun church.
Great place. Great place for young people, especially. Yeah. And I always say this, Muslims can take a page out of that in regards to youth ministries.
I agree.
Where we're always trying to reinvent the wheel when The Christians have been doing it really well for quite a long
Yeah.
time. But that's a different topic in a different podcast, maybe. So the next door neighbors were part of a
Just get a little bit closer to the microphone. Make sure, you don't lean back too far. We want to be able to hear you clearly.
So we went to a Pentecostal, evangelical, full gospel, however you want to call it, church, and that's really where I started getting very involved. Let's fast forward that. I started off as a youth leader.
Yep.
And I was...
So how old were you at this? This is in the Pentecostal church, 16, 17, youth leader? Okay.
16, 17, 18.
Yep.
I started...
You were still going to Catholic school at this time?
No. So this Catholic school's finished.
Yep.
We're in Sri Lanka now. Catholic school in Australia. We'd moved to... My mom and I moved
That's
to
right. Your mom moved
right.
back to Sri Lanka. Yep.
I went to an international school, if you're curious, but...
your accent kind of gives it away.
Does it?
Yeah, it's that international school accent.
I get it. Everyone gets confused with my accent.
No, it's an international, because my wife, she has a international school accent as well. So,
it's an international school accent.
It's a kid who went to an international school, so it's kind of American with a bit of British thrown in.
Do you know what? I get that. I get a lot of people used to get confused with my accent. They'd be like, what, are you Canadian? Are you British? I can't
exactly.
Anyway, I did have British teachers and I had American teachers. Exactly. That's probably where it came from. So I started off as a youth leader, and I was, in charge of a youth group of about 16, 17 kids. Became a worship leader. I was surprisingly able to sing back then. I don't think I can sing anymore. And then I moved on to being a deacon, or what they call a deacon, but which is similar to an assistant pastor, but someone who's never been to the Bible school or Bible college, so doesn't have formal qualifications, but can take on the role of a pastor when he's away. So I did a lot of preaching. I preached in church quite a lot. And also I was part of the church board representing the youth. So I was very, very involved. Interesting thing is of those kids, about 7 of them are now pastors.
Okay.
The kids that I taught and mentored, 7 of them are now pastors.
So you were good at your job.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think that's where I got the foundation of youth work.
Yeah.
And that's where I actually got the passion for working with young people, because you learn a lot. And one thing I find is that sometimes every Tom, Dick and Harry, or Muhammad Abdullah and Abdul Rahman thinks that they can open a youth ministry and also there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of knowledge and understanding that you have to have when you're working with young people. So I was in that church for quite a while, very, very religious, and full gospels tend to believe in miracles. And this is an important thing. They believe that if you have enough faith, anything can happen. You can become a multimillionaire. You can heal anyone. Any disease can be healed from. And that was really one of the core fundamental pillars of my faith, that if you have enough faith, you can do miracles. And keep that in mind, because that's going to be very relevant to the later part, which is when I was around 18, 19, I moved back to Australia for uni. So I finished my school, moved back for uni. I'd started my first year of uni. My mom was still in Sri Lanka. Now, I was a mummy's boy, right? Me and my mom, we were pretty close. I would talk to her about anything, really. And when I moved back to Australia, she stayed in Sri Lanka. She'd call me every single night at 11 p.m. sharp, just to see how I'm doing and have that mummy chat. And it was...
Are you not only child, or you got your brothers, sisters?
I was the only child.
Okay.
I was the only child.
All right.
So we're talking now... I just finished my first year of uni. I did law and arts, majoring in politics. And it was February 20th. Let me think of this. February 20th, 2009. Yes, February 20th, 2009. 11 p.m. My mom gave me a call. And she said, the last couple of days I've been calling you, and haven't been feeling too well. I had a cold. She had a cold for a while, a bit of fever for a while. She had a rash. And she was the chief medical officer at that time. So she was quite a senior doctor. And all her junior doctors had been saying, you've got to get tested. This has been going on for way too long. Get your checkups. So they forced her to get checked up. And that day she told me, I've just been diagnosed with leukemia.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, that's the normal reaction, right? The normal reaction would be, oh, God. Wow. My reaction and her reaction was quite different, because when you've been told for a large portion of your life that if you have faith, God will heal, the reaction for me and her was, well, this is an opportunity for a miracle to happen.
Okay.
And for the rest of my family who are still Buddhists to become Christian.
Okay.
Right? That's kind of where the evangelicals come from. The word evangelical is to spread Christianity. And so, yes, there was a moment, but we were both like, that's fine. We're just going to have faith. We're not going to have any doubt. And to add to that, my dad several years ago had leukemia, but he got completely healed from it.
Okay.
Now he thinks it was because of the breakthrough medication that he was on a trial drug for. My mom and I thought it was because of our prayers, right? So when this happened, she just said, "Look, have faith. Don't doubt. This is going to be an amazing miracle. This is going to be a good thing." And I was like, "Yep, sure, for sure." That was February 20th. February 28th. That was 8 days after. I get a call from her, and she says, "Look, I'm going into a procedure. It's a pretty complicated procedure. Pray for me. I'm sure it's going to be all right. I will speak to you the next day." Next day was the first day of my second year of uni. I went to uni, came back home about 4 o'clock, and my dad was at home. And I just looked at him and said, "Why are you home?" And he said, "Oh, I've got a call from Sri Lanka. Your mom's not in a good state."
Oh, shit.
And I said, "Well, yeah, I know she was going to have a procedure. She's probably some small complication. I'm sure she's fine." I say this so you understand my mental state. It was faith,
Yeah.
no doubt, everything's going to be fine. My dad didn't say anything, and I walked upstairs. I did my assignments, and I was working on my homework and all that stuff. 11 o'clock came, and I didn't get a call from her first time. That's when I actually understood something's serious here. So I went back downstairs, and my dad was still in the same chair. He hadn't moved from 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I said, what's going on? And he said, "Oh, well, your mom's in the ICU." And I said, "Okay, well, what do we do about this?" And she said, "Well, I've bought you a ticket. You should go back." He's like, "I can't come because I have to send the money. If I stop working, I can't send any money to help you. But you should go." And I bought the ticket. And I was like, "What time?" It's like 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, I'm at that time 19 years old, about 19 years old. And I don't know if any 19-year-olds are listening to this. You put yourself in those shoes. Your focus is your assignments in uni, and you think you've got the hardest life ever because you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this bombshell falls on you. And you're told you have a couple of hours now to turn your world upside down. And so I emailed the tutors and the unit coordinators and my work saying I can't do any. I have to go out. My mom's sick. I've got to fly out.
Yeah.
Got extensions and all that. Didn't sleep at all. Next day, flight, caught the flight. Didn't sleep on the flight at all. That 8 hours from Sydney to Singapore was 8 hours, and I think the transit was 8 hours, and then another 3 hours to Sri Lanka. That was probably the most nerve-wracking couple of hours in my life, if not the one-off, because you just didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. Once you're on the flight, I don't know what's happening.
Out of touch now. Yeah.
I land, and I have no clue who's picking me up. I don't know what's going on. I just walked out of the airport, and my friend's parents were there. That's odd. Why was none of my family members there? They picked me up. I got in the car and drove off. And by the way, jump in if I'm rambling.
No.
Drove off, and I was sitting in the front, and my friend's mom, who's sitting in the back, starts to cry. I'm thinking, should I ask her? Should I not ask her? Do I really want to know the answer? And we get to my grandma's house, and I talk to my grandma and aunt, and they said, "Well, your mom's in the ICU. She's not responsive. They put her under for the procedure, and then they tried to bring her back, and she wouldn't wake up." This is okay. This is just a setup for an even greater miracle now. And I was calling every pastor I know, and every pastor was saying, "Just have faith. It's going to be all right. It's going to be great." And so I went straight from there to the hospital. I think I'm looking at about nearly 48 hours of no sleep that day. Straight to the hospital, and I was standing over her, and I was praying, and I was praying my heart out, and I was praying loudly in front of the nurses and the doctors. Again, 19-year-old kid, not the typical 19-year-old kid sort of thing to do.
No.
This was March 1st. And March 1st to March 9th, every single day, I'd go to the hospital and I'd pray, and I was adamant that there was going to be a miracle. Yeah. My uncle, my mom's younger brother, was a doctor. And he is an atheist.
Yeah.
And he was getting calls regularly from the hospital because he was the doctor saying, giving updates on his sister. And it would be one day the kidney's failing. Oh, the kidney's fine. Blood pressure's too high. No, it's fine. Oh, the blood pressure's too low now. Oh, the liver's failing. And he was constantly giving me updates, and I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. It's all going to be all right. And then one day he came up to me and he said, you should prepare yourself that this might be the end for her.
Yeah.
It might not work. And I looked at him, and coming from a subcontinent background, you can relate to this. We respect our elders. We don't talk. I mean, even if we disagree, we're not going to say anything.
No, yeah.
But I looked at my uncle and I said, you live a life of sin, and I don't want your disbelieving words in my ears. I have faith that God's going to heal.
Yep.
So take your disbelief somewhere else.
Wow. Yeah.
And he looked at me. My uncle's a pretty tough guy. He looked at me and he just walked off. I guess he understood that I was in a very emotional state. Walked off. And March 9th, we decided to clean out my mom's house because, like we said, well, even if she gets healed and comes back, she can't live by herself. So I went to her house and it was exactly the way she'd left it.
Yeah.
Bread print was there. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where you go to a house of someone you loved and they're not there, but it smells like them, it looks like them, it feels exactly like that. And I'm having to pack everything up. I did this and I came home. It was about 4 p.m. I was starving. I was about to eat and my uncle gets a call, goes outside, and I heard him saying, yep. And then he hangs up, walks past me, doesn't even look at me, goes to my aunt and my grandma and says, I just got a call from the hospital. My sister passed away.
Yeah.
And he comes up, he walks back to me, and I'm in shock. I'm just staring at him. And he said, did you hear what I said? And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, I'm really sorry to do this, but the hospital wants to know, do we bury her or cremate her? This is March 9th. I spoke to her on February 28th.
Yeah.
Your body and your mind goes into shock.
Yeah.
And I think the shock was not only that you've lost your mother, that was a shock in itself. But now my concept of where home was turned upside down. I always thought home was Sri Lanka. I was just in Australia doing my uni. I'm going to go back home.
Yeah.
Lost that. I lost my sense of reality because I had faith. Why did faith not work in this situation? Why was she not healed? And when I did call some of the pastors who said, have faith is going to be healed, I started getting responses like, maybe your faith wasn't strong enough. Or,
That's going to hurt.
and there's a worse one,
hurt.
maybe your mom had a sin that we didn't know about and she hid it from everyone, right? And there I was trying my very best not to strangle them.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of energy to have faith, to have blind faith. It takes a lot of mental energy to see the facts before you and still say, no, I'm not going to accept that. You know, I kind of sympathize with all these right-wing nutters sometimes. People say, oh, you look at the facts. Can you not see the facts? Well, no, if you push yourself to an extreme, you can be completely blinded to the facts and go with it. And in a way, that takes a lot of quote-unquote faith. That's where I was. And suddenly that was all broken. That was all shattered. And I'm getting these lame excuses from people that I trusted. And that's where my anger starts to develop. And I start telling myself, where was God? Why did this not happen? My mom didn't do a sin. I had as much faith as I could. It was not possible for a 19-year-old to have any more faith than I did. And I look at my uncle. He's obviously sad. He was very close to my mother. He was upset. But he's functioning. He's still talking to people. He's getting the funeral organized. I'm not.
Because he was a doctor, though. Doctors often, they become a bit numb to death. They see it all the time, and they understand that it's a fact of life.
Possibly, but I think when it's family, that goes out the window.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And he was sad. He was.
Yeah.
But it was like he knew it was going to happen. It was part of life. For me, it was not part of life. It was not a concept in my reality that if you prayed hard enough, this could happen. So he was managing it much better. And I thought, well, where's the justice in this? An atheist is doing way better with death than someone who's religious. And I remember my friends and my friends who didn't believe in God or who were atheists or whatever, how they lived their life and they, in my eyes, had a great time, much more fun time than I did. And they still have their moms, and they're still doing all right. Where's the sacrifices that I made? Why didn't it? I didn't ask for much. I just wanted my mom to be alive. Why didn't that happen? And the more I thought about it and the more I ruminated on it, the more angry I got. And I started building up that anger. And at one point, I can't remember to who I said it. I didn't talk to many people about it, but either it was to my friend or maybe it was in my own mind. I said, I really hope there is a God. I really, really hope there is a God, because at least then I know who to blame. Because if there's no God, who do I blame for this? Someone has to take responsibility for turning my whole concept of this universe upside down. And that started me considering myself atheist.
Okay.
Right. That's where I started saying, that's it. I don't believe in any organized religion. I think organized religion is a brainwashing cult, any one of them. And that's where we get to my friend.
Yep.
He was one of my close friends. He was one of the few people I was talking to.
This is in Sri Lanka, or
this is in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
This is in Sri Lanka. So his name was Abdullah, and he was one of those people that I started saying. And his dad had died a few months before my mom from a stroke, and he was the one who said, "Well, people die, people live. You don't blame God for that." And I said, "Really? Well, let me prove Islam wrong to you, because I've proved Christianity wrong to myself. Let me prove Islam wrong."
How
to
did you prove Christianity wrong to yourself? Do you think just because of the fact that you prayed and had faith?
If one of your key tenets in your religion was that if you have faith, then God heals, miracles happen.
Yeah.
We're talking about the prosperity gospel, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that term. And when your own mother doesn't get healed,
Yeah.
and you've prayed as hard as you can pray, and she's prayed as hard as you can pray, then what more is there in that religion? Right? What more is there to hold on to?
But then surely everyone who's a member of that church, eventually they will see death, or a loved one will die. And why do you think that those people don't turn away from the church?
I suppose it's partially to do with personality. I had a personality that was always critical.
Yeah.
And I always thought about things. I guess you could very easily ignore that aspect. I guess it had to do with if you were an angry person. I was an angry person. It probably had to do with the fact of where you were. If you were just an everyday churchgoer, then maybe it wouldn't have affected you. If you were someone like me who was teaching people to become pastors, then you question yourself, of what am I teaching people? You start calling yourself a hypocrite, and that's what I was doing.
Interesting. Okay.
So perhaps that's why. I guess it's different people. Maybe some of those people asked questions from pastors, and some of those pastors gave them a better answer than I got. Who knows? I don't know. But I was where I was at that time. And and that's when my friend said that. I said, well, I'm going to prove Islam wrong to you. And he said, you know what? If you can prove Islam wrong to me, I'll leave Islam.
Okay.
And I said, right, give me a couple of months and I'll prove Islam wrong to you. And if I do you promise to go out to the bar with me and have a glass of beer? And he said, yeah, I promise. And we shook on it.
Yeah. If you were so confident, though, that God doesn't exist at that point, why did you feel the need to disprove your friend as well? Like, what was the driving motivator there?
Anger.
Okay.
I was angry. I was angry at religion. I was angry at people who were religious. I was angry at God.
Yep.
And I felt that I was saving my friend from something that I hated.
Yeah.
And I didn't want him to be part of.
Okay.
That's where it was coming from.
Yep.
And probably, if I can get someone else just as angry as me with the same thing that I was angry about, great. Bonus.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it came from, to be honest. It wasn't anything romantic, or it was just pure raw anger. And that's where it started. So I came back to Australia and uni started again as if nothing's happened. But of course, my whole world's changed.
Yep.
Everyone else continued life as they always did. And whenever I got the chance, whenever I had a few minutes to spare, I was online looking in Islam. And it was backwards and forwards. YouTube, there'll be 1 minute I'd watch a YouTube clip and I'm like, yeah, Islam's pretty bad. It's pretty horrible. They're all terrorists. And I'll watch another YouTube video and I'll be like, oh, no, that's pretty nice. That's quite beautiful. And it was just backwards and forwards, backwards. And at some point, and I wish I could tell you when, I suppose somewhere halfway along the line, I started to transition from it's a barbaric, crazy cult to, oh, there's some deep thinking here. There is some philosophy and intelligence and intellectuality in this religion. It didn't just crop up in the middle of a desert.
No.
There is some beauty. And one of the first things I realized was the commonalities between that and Christianity.
Give us some examples.
I thought you were going to ask that.
Yeah.
The Lord's Prayer and Surah Fatiha, right? If you put them side by side and you break them into topics or the main terms that each part talks about, they're almost identical. So you start with, let's say, the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, the first part is acknowledgement of God's might, that he is God and he is the creator. Take Surah Fatiha, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin. The second part, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses. So the second part is you're actually asking something. Give us this day our daily bread. Take Surah Fatiha, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. It's that asking from the person you've just acknowledged as the creator, the Lord of everything. And then, our daily bread, forgive us our trespasses. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Keep us on the straight path and not on the path that has wronged you. You can really see those similarities. So I was like, this is the Arabic version of the Lord's Prayer.
Can we, just for our listeners, can we, so Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, where we were up to Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Can you translate that for our viewers? Roughly?
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. There's a lot of, all Muslims will know that there's a lot of subtlety in Quranic Arabic that it's not something, there's a lot of subtlety and layers.
And I'm no way an Islamic scholar or anything. So from you alone do we ask, like rough paraphrasing. From you do we ask, and from you alone do we seek help. And it's the parallel with the Lord's Prayer is quite surprising. Really quite surprising.
I never knew that, actually, funnily enough. I know the Lord's Prayer, but I went to an Anglican school, so, but never.
You put the two topics aside each other, it follows the same exact pattern. Now,
would you say that perhaps the Islam deniers would say, well, the Prophet Muhammad just ripped off the Lord's Prayer?
This is where I started off with when I was searching, that he ripped off the Lord's Prayer. But what we're talking about, how many years? 1400 years ago, right? We're talking about a man who was illiterate, most accounts. He had no religious background. He had no one in the family who was religious. He lived in the middle of nowhere, of no religious significance at all. And we're not talking about a time where Bibles were freely available. They were not printed. You were lucky if you had a handwritten copy of a type of Bible in one of the major cathedrals in one of the major cities in Christendom. So a shepherd / caravan manager getting access to that and then understanding the key topics of the Lord's Prayer and then creating an Arab version of that matches that just doesn't make sense historically. And that's what I realized. I'm like, he couldn't get a copy of a Bible. He couldn't get a copy of a manuscript. Even if he got a copy of the Lord's Prayer, he couldn't read. And there was no one to explain the quote-unquote tafsir of it to him. He had no access to priests. Even if he came across a priest, it was during his caravan trips for maybe a couple of days, let's say. He's not going to get the religious knowledge that you're required to understand that. And that's just one. We're talking about one example here.
What language was the Lord's Prayer originally in? Do you know?
Well, Jesus spoke Aramaic.
Yes.
And here's the interesting thing. We have no copies of the Aramaic.
No.
What we have earliest is Greek. So at some point, the Aramaic got translated to Greek. We don't know how. We don't know.
Probably via Latin. There's no Latin version either.
Latin later. Greek and then Latin.
But the Romans ruled Jerusalem at the time, so it makes sense that he spoke Aramaic, but, Jerusalem was ruled by
the Romans.
By the Romans who spoke Latin.
Our earliest sources of the Bible, or not the Bible, but books of the Bible, comes from Greek.
Okay, so somehow went from Aramaic probably to Latin and then to Greek.
It's probably more the other way, from Aramaic to Greek.
Okay.
At that time, again, I'm not a historian, but my understanding is a lot of the academics, or the scholars, religious scholars were working in Greek.
Okay, interesting.
And then it went to Latin. And then the Catholic Church developed Latin as more and more Romans started becoming Christian.
Okay.
Again, anyone listening to this, if you historically...
if you want to fix us up, please leave a comment below if there's any mistakes here. May God forgive our mistakes.
Exactly. But we just don't know. We don't know who the authors are. We assign Matthew, Mark, Luke, and James to the names because we think that they are. But even biblical historians, Christian biblical historians, accept that they probably didn't write those books. We don't know who wrote them.
What do you know about the diverging a bit from this? Sorry, but this is getting into really interesting territory. We should do another episode on this. What do you know about the 12 tribes and the lost scrolls and the scrolls that were later that were lost in the town? Have you looked at it?
Yeah,
do you know much about that?
I do. So the lost tribes, briefly.
Briefly. Give us the 2-minute summary.
This is trying to dig through the archives of my Christian knowledge after many, many years. You have the 12 tribes of Israel, right? The Israel and later part got divided into 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea. Judea was one of the 12 tribes. When Israel and Judea were later conquered by the Syria and then Babylonia, the tribes were dispersed, and this is where we get the concept of the lost tribes of Israel, right? When you're referring to the Dead Sea Scrolls,
Dead Sea Scrolls, that's the one. Yeah.
A view is that the Dead Sea Scrolls were written by a group called the Ibnite Christians. There's another view that it was written by a Jewish group as well, but some scholars say it was written by the Ibnite Christians, or at least part of the Dead Sea Scrolls were written by the Ibnite Christians. If you're asking about who the Ibnite Christians were, it's really interesting. If you look at the practices of the Ibnite Christians and you look at how they lived their lives, I heard on YouTube, and I've unfortunately forgotten the name, they said, if you want to imagine an Ibnite Christian, look at the Muslims. That's exactly how they lived. So the early Christians, the very, very early Christians, did not have a concept that Jesus was God.
No.
This was an argument that they had. There was a lot of infighting based on this. But many, many of the early Christians did not believe Jesus as God. They still held on to their Jewish traditions, their Sharia,
yes,
of what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat, and following the Sabbath, and the exoteric aspects of it, which you don't have in Christianity. Christianity is now all esoteric, all spirituality.
There's no practical component.
There's no parameters really now.
Yeah, I think a few famous people, and I won't say his name because I think you can get banned from YouTube for saying it, but certain bald man who converted to Islam recently as well basically said that Islam is the only religion left because it's the only religion that still has rules, where every other religion, Christianity included, doesn't really have any rules or parameters that things you can't do. And some people like that, some people don't like that.
Look, there's a bit of truth in that, but I don't think you can paint a broad brush on Christians as well. There is a Christianity, when you say Christianity, it's huge.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's so many doctrines.
The biggest denomination, what's the biggest denomination of Christianity? Is it Catholicism?
I'd probably say it's Catholicism.
Yeah.
But within then the Protestants, there's so many. There's the
Yeah.
Presbyterians and the Anglicans and the Evangelicals and so on and so forth. And so each different church, even within the same, the Baptist churches, one Baptist church may have very, very differing view to another Baptist church and another church.
But they all share the same belief in the Trinity, that Jesus is the Son of God.
And he died for your sins.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that's the same thing. Yeah, they key that, virgin birth, and they believe that following Jesus is the key to salvation.
But you take those 3 things that you just mentioned away, you're left with Islam.
Yeah.
Right? You're left with Islam.
Yeah.
But going back to the Ibnite Christians, is interesting. So this particular person said, if you want to see what an Ibnite Christian looks like, look at the Muslims, because they kept the haram and the halal, and they practiced, but they believed in Jesus as the Messiah, not as God necessarily, but as the Messiah. Anyway, we've gone off the topic.
No, this is interesting. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Yeah,
so
I like it.
I think that dealt with a little bit, minimal knowledge that I have on that.
Okay.
So where were we with my story?
We were talking your story. You were basically trying to prove that your friend was wrong. You compared the parallels of Surah Fatiha and the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And then we went from there, and I was asking, translating.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So at this stage in my story, I am starting to go from Islam is a respectable religion to Islam might have some truth in here, because that's the only way my brain can comprehend the fact that the Lord's Prayer is very, very similar to Surah Fatiha. And the more I'm researching and the more I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's some truth amongst the Christian theology I understood, and Islam. I'm not saying they're all true, but I'm thinking maybe there's some truth in here. So I've kind of turned my thinking a little bit by now. And then as I'm doing this, I would visit Sri Lanka quite often, and every time I go, I'd ask Abdullah questions about Islam and Islamic theology and try to explain to him from a Christian perspective what this is. And he would be like, sure, I don't know. Sure, yeah, whatever you say, right? He wasn't, at that time, the most practicing person, the most knowledgeable person. He was then like an average Muslim that we get.
I think the majority of Muslims are like that.
That's right.
They're not scholars. They're not academics. You know, let's be honest, living these sometimes is hard enough. But here's, you know, and it's like you take things for granted. You may just listen, okay, cool, your mosque says this, you have faith. Which, look, I can see a merit in that, but I also think that it's at some point, but you were 19 at the time as well. Most
20,
20, yeah. Honestly, most kids around that age religion isn't their primary. I mean, the Prophet was 45 when he had his first revelations.
And I get that.
And
I think that's,
you know,
yeah. I think we have to sometimes give some of these young people a bit of slack when they, you know, at least they're praying and they're trying.
Yeah.
But there's a flip side to that as well. And the flip side to this is when someone's talking to you about religion or Islam and they're asking you questions, you are Islam for that person. If you tell them, go ask a scholar or watch this video, it's very unlikely they will. And even if they did, they go off with, well, you're a Muslim, shouldn't you know? Yeah. I honestly believe that every practicing Muslim should have at least a basic idea of what is the religion? Yeah, 100%. What is your relationship with your creator? And what is your relationship with the Prophet? And what is your relationship? If you should be able to kind of articulate those key aspects. Because if someone...
I think, though, a 20-year-old...
But here's the problem, because you don't know who Allah sends into your life to ask about Islam. Yeah. And in that situation, when I was speaking to Abdullah, he was Islam. I was not prepared to talk to anyone else at that time. Whatever response he gave was how I judged it. And so every Muslim now carries that burden. Whether you like it or not, you at that point will represent Islam. Am I guilt-tripping someone into feeling bad about it? No, of course not. No. You know, but be aware that, especially for those who live in the West, where majority of the people aren't Muslim, you will get questions. You may get answered these questions. And honestly, does it take a lot of your energy to understand some of the basics of Islam? Let's be honest, not really.
No. But I think my experience personally in my life and with people I know as well, a lot of people are religious, but they don't have that deep understanding of their soul or the spirit. And that comes later when you kind of abandon materialistic things to a degree.
Well, I always say everyone's a convert, in my opinion. And the reason I say this is because that at some point in your life, you will make an active decision to ask yourself, do I follow this because what my parents say, or do I actually going to believe this? I think everyone does at some point, and I think that's where your heart converts.
Yes, that's a good point. I know lots of people like that. I know people who have left the religion in that way. You know, they're nominally Muslim, but they're not really in any way at all. And there are no ones who have become far more practicing as a result of that. And sometimes it might be, in your case, a calamity befalls them, something happens in their life.
Correct. Yeah.
And they're like, you know, and they turn to God. And I find that interesting. It's fascinating.
Right. And to drive the point that I said home is when I was talking to Abdullah about this and he kept saying, well, I don't know. There was one time I was in Sri Lanka and I was asking these questions and he said, I don't know. And that was the day before I was to fly back to Australia. And something snapped at me that day. Something snapped. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? When I catch the flight tomorrow and if the plane goes down and it crashes and I die and I realize there is a God and he says you're going to hell, I will say I agree to that on one condition, that you send Abdullah straight after me. Because I kept asking him and he kept saying, I don't know. And I didn't get anything from him. Yeah. And I kid you not, I will never forget the look on his face. At that time, I didn't realize how impactful that was for a Muslim to hear that. Yeah. But his jaw literally dropped and his eyes were so big. And he I think he was speechless for a bit. Yeah. And then he said, are you that serious? Yeah. Like, mate, I've been talking to you about this for 2 years. Of course I'm serious. Yeah. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. And then he said, well, if you're that serious, I'll find someone that can answer your questions. So like, I'll get someone for you. And I was like, yeah, you do that. Yeah. Right. And this is my anger side again popping up. Now, his younger brother, Yusuf, just a side note, had come. I think Yusuf was probably 16, 17 at the time. He had come from a different city, Kandy, where he was living. to see me off, but we were also planning to go clubbing that night and do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And then instead of that, we decided we're going to meet a Muslim scholar. So Yusuf was like, "Cop, what the heck?" Could have told me this before I came all this way. So Abdullah called a friend called a friend called a cousin, and a cousin called a friend. I know that. I still remember that.
It's like a chain of narration.
They called everyone.
Yeah.
And then it was about 8 o'clock. I was packing my bag, having some chips from KFC, and Abdullah gets a call from an unknown number, and he says, "We heard that you have a friend who's interested in Islam, and he has some questions. There's someone who's available. Do you want to meet him?" And so Abdullah got off, looked at me and said, "Look, there's someone. Do you want to meet him?" And I said, "This is the last chance. This is it. I'm tired of researching.
Yeah.
I'm going back to Australia tomorrow. Yeah, I want to meet him." Now, at that time, I had gathered together about 14 questions that I had been asking Muslims, several Muslims, not just Abdullah, and I wasn't getting a proper answer. I was one of those people who was so annoying that on university open days, I would go straight to the Islamic stall or the Muslim Association stall, and I'd ask them questions. And then I'd go straight to the Christian stall and ask them questions. And I'd do this every single day to the point that when they saw me, they'd close the stall and walk off. Right? I was annoying as hell. And I didn't get the right answer. When I go up, and I was coming from a theological point.
Yeah.
And I was getting things like Muslims aren't terrorists, we don't mistreat women. And I'm like, I get that. I don't care about that aspect of it. Maybe someone else does. I don't.
Yeah.
I had more theological questions. Now, I'm guessing you're going to ask me, what is those 14 questions?
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone asks me.
Yeah.
I can't remember all 14.
Doesn't matter.
But I can remember a couple.
Yeah. Tell me what the most impactful question there was, the most important one to
Well,
you.
I'll tell you the ones I can remember.
Yeah.
One of the things I can remember is I said, in Islam, you talk about the Kaaba, right? And you say the Kaaba was built by Prophet Adam before that, but historically from Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and it was built with Ishmael. Why isn't it in the Torah or the Injil or the Zabur? Everything else is there. All the other stories are there.
Yeah.
But you'd think building a Kaaba is pretty significant. Why didn't the Jews put that in, or the Israelites or the Hebrews put that in their holy books? Why is there no mention of the Kaaba? I didn't get an answer for that. No one told me why, properly at least. So, the Bible's been, the answer I always kept getting was the Bible's been corrupted.
It's been corrupted, yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay, sure, it's corrupted, but isn't it convenient that that exact part just got corrupted and magically disappeared? That's a significant thing, right, of what Prophet Ibrahim did. Surely that should be in there. We get all the other nitty-gritty little bits of Prophet Ibrahim's life in the Bible. Why is this not there? Side note, though, Mecca is referred to in the Bible.
Yeah.
Becca, it's called.
Okay. Really? Whereabouts? What is it? In what context?
Now
I'm a bit of a scholar. But in what context is it referred to?
It refers to... Oh, guys, someone listening out, they'll probably know. It refers to... Was it Jacob? I feel like it was Jacob. One of the biblical prophets was running away, and he takes rest at a place called Becca.
Okay.
And I believe it was at this place that he has a dream where an angel came and wrestled with him, and he refers to that as wrestling with God. Now, I would have been able to tell you the whole story completely if you'd asked me this about 10 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
I'm starting to forget things. But it refers to Becca.
I think you should brush up on your Bible studies.
Maybe should I?
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's I've read parts of the Bible. It's one of those things that I've been meaning to read the whole, all of it, because it's interesting. It is interesting, and the stories in there are interesting. The parables, there's lots of lessons. I think Muslims can learn a lot from because the Bible and the Quran, from what I understand, are very different types of books. You know what I mean?
It is, and I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I thought the Quran was going to be like the Bible until I got the Quran. And I read it, and I'm like, I can't make head or tails of this. Where's the stories?
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
Like, the book of the camel, where's the camel? Why is there no story about a camel? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It was quite shocking for me. But we're jumping ahead. Anyway, there is a reference to Becca in the Bible, but there's no reference to the Kaaba. And that was one of my 14 questions. Why? So it was a very theological kind of place I was coming from. Now, Abdullah says to me, you're going to meet someone knowledgeable. Don't make a fool of yourself and embarrass yourself and me. Write these down. Write the questions down. And I looked around, there's nothing there I could find. So I had a KFC packet of chips. I ripped the packet open.
So this is pre-iPhone, pre-smartphone era.
I'm sure someone rich back in the day had
Yeah,
these smartphones, but I didn't.
No.
I ripped open the chips packet, dusted off the salt, and then started writing the 14 questions down on that.
Nice.
Folded it up, put it in my pocket.
Yep.
And Abdullah was told, come to this particular mosque at 9 o'clock in the night. So off me and Abdullah and Yusuf went. Yusuf was annoyed as hell, wasn't talking to us.
Wanted to go.
Yeah, he
wanted to go out.
Yeah, 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Planning to have a fun time with his brother and his brother's best friend, and I was just ruining it for him. Go to the mosque. We're standing outside the mosque. Don't know who's picking us up. Don't know what's going to happen. And then this dark blue BMW rolls up. Remember it really well. And tinted, very dark glasses.
Man, it sounds like a different kind of story.
Right? And the window goes down, and this bloke in there with a thobe or the stash, right? Big beard and a cap. And he looks out and he says, are you Abdullah? And Abdullah says, yeah. He says, get in the car.
Oh, no. It sounds like some CIA shit going on.
Oh, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So Abdullah gets in the front. I'm sitting in the back with Yusuf. And we're driving off.
Yeah.
Random stranger, random car. Don't know where we're going. We're driving off, 9 o'clock in the night.
Yeah.
My flight's the next day at like evening, 5 p.m. or something. And he looks up in the rearview mirror at me. And there's no hi, there's no Assalamualaikum, how are you, nothing. The first question he asked me is, what religion are you?
Yeah.
And I think to myself, well, if I say I'm atheist, it's more likely he'll kill me than if I say Christian. Christian people of the book, he might be a little bit nicer to me. I say Christian. And I get about a half an hour lecture about why Christianity is wrong. And I'm thinking, right, how do I get out of this car? At one point, I actually think about Commando rolling out of the car to the next traffic light.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the worst decision of my life. I just wasted an
So was he the guy when the told?
No.
He was the driver?
No, he was going to take me to a place.
Okay.
The guy was going to speak to me, right?
Yeah.
Now, look, I say this, but I honestly make dua for that guy because I am where I am because of him going out of his way to pick me up.
Yeah.
Perhaps not the best deliverance of things,
I mean, it was a BMW at least, wasn't it? It was a nice car, so I know. You'd be like, okay, well, you know, how bad can he be?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we go from there to another mosque on the outskirts of city of Colombo.
Yeah.
No idea where we are anymore.
Yeah.
And it's about, I'd say about 10:30. And we get out and there's all these Muslims around in thobes and sashes walking around praying. And I'm like, what are they doing at the mosque at this time? No one goes to church at 10:30 in the night.
Yeah.
What are these people doing? And now it's, for the first time, I'm starting to think like, ooh, I'm starting to remember 9/11 terrorism and all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself involved in? And the guy who brought us here said, look, I can't take you to see this guy who's going to talk to you. But you see that van down the road, that white van? Just get in that white van and they'll take you.
No way.
Now,
no way.
in Sri Lanka, when kids don't eat or go to bed, the moms say, you better do this or the white van's going to come and take you, right? I think it's a subcontinent.
Yeah, I had a similar story. Yep.
So here are all my neurons in my head going off about all the stories my mom told about white vans. And I look at Abdullah and Yusuf and they're not feeling very comfortable either. They're starting to feel uncomfortable. And so we go and we open the van door and sitting in the dark are 3 identical people who looked exactly like the guy who brought us. Tobes, big beards, and a hat. All in the dark, sitting there in the back.
So what's this, the Sri Lankan Muslim mafia or something?
This is what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking, because at some point someone said you're going to meet the mufti. It wasn't the mufti, but I'm like, this is not the Muslim mufti. This is the Muslim mafia that I'm dealing with. What is this? And so me, Abdullah and Yusuf pile into the front seat. The other 3 guys are sitting behind us. And then the guys in front are driving. And there's this little TV that's in front of us. And it keeps rolling all these hadiths about the day of judgment and the torture of the grave. And I'm thinking, well, I'm dead. That's it. That's it. These people, they're not talking to me. Dead silence with all these hadiths and hadiths of like scary hadiths as well. And I'm thinking that's it. Like, you know, the next thing we know is an Australian kid from Australia killed out on the side of the street. And I turned to Yusuf and I said, I'm really sorry about this. I was actually saying, I'm sorry you're going to die. I'm sorry about this. It's not my fault. And he snaps back, well, whose fault is it then? And I'm thinking, this night just couldn't get worse. And we're driving out. We past villages, paddy fields. There's no more street lights, bumpy roads, not even tarmacked. And we get to this house at 11 o'clock in the night, about 11:30. And we get out, and then this little guy comes out. He's short, bald head, little beard, wearing a sarong, not wearing a thobe or anything. He says, come in, I've been expecting you. And I'm like, what, at 11:30 you're expecting me? And we go inside, And he sits us down, and the first thing he says to me is, I know you have a lot of questions, and I know this must be difficult for you. I want you to think of me as your father. Ask me anything. Don't worry about it being insultive. Don't worry about it being offensive. Anything you've got, ask me. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to kill someone, that's not how you're going to start, right? So I reckon I'm not going to die tonight. So I pull out my little piece of paper, my KFC packet. I put it in front of him. And I start going through each of the questions one by one. And I can't say it was like mind-blowing answers, but I could say that he gave satisfactory answers to where I was like, from a logical perspective, that makes sense, right? Okay, I get that. To the Kaaba question. He said, well, the Kaaba was built when Ibrahim alayhi salam visited his son Ishmael. Ishmael and his wife Hajar were but sent away by Ibrahim alayhi salam under the command of Allah. And he was visiting them. That means the ancestors of the Jewish people, Isaac alayhi salam, may not have been on those trips. He would have been staying with his mother Sarah. And therefore he may not have known. And maybe Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam never told them. Or it may be that it was never part of their legacy or their lineage to add into their books.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
It makes sense.
That makes sense.
I was like, all right, why didn't anyone tell me this before?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense. And so we went through those questions one at a time till 1:30 in the morning. From 11:30 till 1:30 in the morning. One at a time we went through it. And each and every one he gave a fairly good logical answer. Then he went into the back and he got his Bible. And he said, let's look at the Bible while we're going through this. And I was like, oh, he has a Bible. He's not burning it or, he actually cares about it.
Yeah.
And I was impressed. And then one of the guys who brought us in the van, he started saying, Sheikh, Shan's learned a lot from you. And I was like, I know where this is going. I was in an evangelical church.
Yeah.
I know he's going to make me say the Shahada.
Yeah.
And if he says it, my answer is no, I'm not going to do it. But the sheikh that was talking to me, he cut him off and he said, hang on. Yeah, Shan's learned a lot from me, but I've learned a lot from Shan. There's a lot. We had a really good discussion. There's a lot for him to think about. Let the guy think. It's like, oh, I didn't expect that. The used car salesman thing. You seal the deal. Well,
exactly.
Why are they not sealing the deal?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. He goes to the back and gets me 2 books, Ahmed Deedat's Choice, the volume 1 and volume 2.
Yep.
And he said, read this. Have a read of this. So we came back home. My brain was buzzing. I can't even remember how we got home, to be honest. I can't remember how I got home. The next day was
the BMW didn't drop you home.
No, the van. I assume the van dropped us home. I honestly have no memory of it. Maybe they spiked the drinks. I'm joking. I can't remember.
Did your friend's little brother Yusuf? Did he?
So they were really interested in the conversation as well. And when I came out, Yusuf was like, "Oh, that was really interesting," because we had a deep, proper theological conversation that most Muslims never get a chance to be part of.
Yeah,
and that's a shame as well.
It is.
Here's another thing that I think as Muslims we could do better. We are so scared of asking questions because we're so worried that we may not have the answers.
No. I think that a lot of Muslims are scared to answer the questions because of judgment from others. We're like, oh, you're a kafir, you're a kufari because you're asking, how can you ask this question? They can't separate faith from theology or academia from faith. That's the thing.
But Islam encourages questions.
Yes, exactly.
It's not a religion that says, do it because I told you. It's actually the opposite. It talks about people who say, well, we follow our faith because our forefathers did. And it kind of says it in a negative life. Don't do that. Use your brains. Use your logic. There's a really good book by...
That's what people at the time of the Prophet were doing. They were following their faiths because their forefather did.
Exactly.
Without
and
any rhyme or reason.
Religion is robust enough to manage any question you can throw. If it's existed for 1400 years with very intellectual scholars throwing questions at it and it's passed the test of time, I'm pretty sure it can manage Daisy Auntie asking a couple of questions before it collapses. I don't think it will.
No, exactly.
So I think we need to have a bit more confidence in our religion and we need to really ask ourselves. And there's a good book by a convert called Martin Lang. I don't know if you guys know, he's a maths professor. And he wrote a book which actually, the title of it is Even Angels Ask. Because when Allah created Prophet Adam, they said, oh Allah, why did you create humans? And Allah didn't say, how dare you? Why do you? Even angels ask that question. We shouldn't ask questions to the point of insanity. There's some people who just ask questions for the sake of it and then they start going down rabbit holes.
Yeah.
No, you should know your basics of your religion. But if it comes from a genuine, curious place and you genuinely want to know, ask. And there will be someone who can give you a proper answer, because guaranteed that question's been asked before. Anyways, I digress, but I think for Yusuf and Abdullah, it was quite eye-opening, because they've never, in their entire lives, 16 plus lives, I don't think they've ever had that intellectual conversation where questions were asked and answered. The flight back to Australia, I was reading Ahmadiyyat's book, the entire flight. I read it from cover to cover. By the time we landed, I had finished.
What's the book called again?
The Choice. Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Ahmadiyyat, he's the South African?
Correct.
Yes,
South African.
yeah. He's got a really cool accent. He's very well spoken.
I became a very big fan of him.
Yeah.
What I really liked about him, since then there's been many debaters that have kind of done what he's done. What I liked about Ahmadiyyat is he debated it, but he debated in a very gentle position. He was always friendly. He always referred to his opposition as his friend.
Muhammad Hijab.
I'm not going to give names to get myself in trouble.
But there's a few Muslim debaters online. Perhaps that's they're trying to become influencers or whatever as well, and their brand is to be hyper aggressive.
I think
it can work if you do it funny. There's one guy, I forgot his name. He goes to that place in London, and he's pretty aggressive, but he's really funny about it. He acts like a bit of a gangster, even the way he dresses. But yeah,
I think for the audience, if it's for young Muslims who need a bit of encouragement and confidence, perhaps that is a good place to go with. For someone like me who was actually looking into Islam from a genuine place, it put me off. There was a lot of speakers, I won't say scholars, but speakers of in Islam that put me off. I think it put me several weeks behind in my search, because I just didn't sit well with how the arrogance or the ego got in the way. Ahmadiyyat was not that. He was a very gentle person, and he was always, even when he was from a debate point slaughtering his opposition, he'd do it with a smile and a lot of kindness. And I found that quite beautiful. Anyway, so landed in Australia, had read the Ahmadiyyat book, The Choice. Mind was a whirlwind. And I started to think I need to read the Quran properly. So I went online and I Googled free Qurans. And I came across this site called Discover Islam Australia, I think it was. And I emailed them and I said, can you send me a free Quran? And they sent me a free Quran in a couple of days. And I said, I'm going to go through the entire Quran, and I'm going to put ticks and crosses. Anything I like, ticks. Anything I dislike, crosses. I didn't obviously do that, but I got through Surah Fatiha, and it was all tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I can accept every single thing in this. This is kind of what sits right with my heart. I don't have any problem with this. And the next thing I started doing was, back in the day, MP3, that gives you an idea of how old I am. MP3 Shuffle. I downloaded YouTube videos on how to pray onto my MP3 Shuffle. Put it on my ears. I printed out the Arabic transliteration of how to pray and the translation of that. And I read it and I'm like, yep, that makes sense. I can do that. And I started praying with the shuffle in my...
So you hadn't gone to a mosque or anything at this point?
No, but I started praying before I became Muslim. Because something drew me to it. I was like, I think there was a part of me that longed for that connection with the Creator that I once had.
Yes, and which you had lost after the death of your mother.
The human mind's a very lonely place. No one really knows what's going in there other than yourself. If you think about it, from the day you're born to the day you're dying, the world we see is not really the world. The world we see is what we see in our mind. So your world is slightly different to my world. Of course, even when we're talking here, what you're seeing is slightly different. Now, your world is occupied by just you.
You're the main character in your story.
You're the only character.
The only character.
There's no one else that sees the world the way you see. That's incredibly lonely. If you think about it, very depressing. From the day you die to the day you're born, the world you live in only exists for you and no one else.
That's deep.
And I thought, that's horrible. And the only way that is okay is if there was a Creator who knew that. If I could share that world with my Lord, I'm okay with that. And I started thinking that's probably where that connection of us with our Creator is so important and so strong, because even with our parents, they don't share the world you live in. The only one who does share the world you live in, and your deepest secrets and your deepest problems and your traumas and everything else that you never talk to anyone ever about, And those feelings that you can't even put a word on, the only one who knows that is your Lord. And if you don't have a creator, what an absolutely lonely place you live. And that's where I was.
The universe is a lonely place. Yeah.
It is extremely lonely.
Yeah.
And that's why you can be surrounded by so many people and you can have amazing friends and everything, and you still feel lonely. And I think that's where I was. And that's why I started praying, because I was just like, I need that connection because I'm incredibly lonely. I forced myself to be in a position where I live in a world by myself, but I don't think my body and my mind was made for that. I don't think anyone else's is as well. If you're going to be truly honest, I don't think we like living in our minds by ourselves.
I just want to circle back to the whole atheism thing. Why do you think most atheists are truly atheists, or are they just agnostic, or they don't know and they like the label of atheism because it's cool? You know, it was. I think atheism is becoming less cool these days, to be honest.
I was the latter.
Yeah.
Right. I really was the latter. I can't pass judgment on an entire group of people, so I don't know. I don't know if everyone's like that. I don't know their story. I don't know if they genuinely believe it or they genuinely don't. What I do know is that I, as an atheist, was very lonely. As far as I was adamant and angry, I was very lonely.
Yeah.
Do everyone else feel that way? I don't know. If there's any atheists listening out there, tell me. Do you feel that way? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was. And that's why I started praying, because I really wanted to connect with someone else who actually lived in the world that my mind had created for myself. So here I was praying and listening. And I went back to work one day. I was working at university. And there was
So just want to clarify something. You said this was happening over 2 years, this journey of yours, but you were traveling back and forth from Sri Lanka.
Correct.
And you were in touch with Abdullah via email or text
Correct.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
cool.
whenever I see him, I talk to him about this. And so we're talking about the last time I did that before I became Muslim. There was an Algerian security guard at my workplace, and he was one of the people that I was asking questions about Islam. So I met him, and he said, "Oh, you went to Sri Lanka. How was it?" And I told him what happened, and I told him how I nearly felt like I was getting kidnapped and all this story. And he listened to me very patiently, and he said, "Okay, well, in this whole journey of looking into Islam, where are you now?" And I said, "Look, I'm not a Muslim. Let me get this clear. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not going back into that trauma of being part of an organized religion. I haven't said the Shahada, but I'm praying as a Muslim." He said, "Oh, you're praying. Oh, how do you pray? Do you pray in Arabic?" And I'm like, yeah, I've heard the transliteration and I'm reading it, and I've got my earphones on and my iPod shuffle in my pocket, and I'm following along, and I kind of memorized it already because I've done it so many times. So, okay, do you know what you're saying? And I'm like, of course, I'm not going to say something I don't know what I'm saying. I looked it up, I read it, I'm totally cool with it. He said, "Oh, you're totally cool with it. So you understand?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I haven't said the Shahada." And he said, "You know, every time you pray, you say the Shahada, right?"
Yeah.
And I remember looking at him and I just went, "I'll see you at work tomorrow."
Yeah.
And I just turned around and I walked away, and I cannot remember how I got home.
Yeah.
My whole time, my heart was beating.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "You stupid man, what have you done? What have you? You promised yourself you're not going to go down this path, and you've got yourself in this mess. What have you done?" And here's an interesting thing that I think really shook me to the core was when I saw my uncle as an atheist dealing with my mother's death better than I did. I made a promise to myself that day, very, very clearly I made a promise to myself. I said, no matter what happens, I will always choose the inconvenient truth over the convenient lie. Because I felt I was living the convenient lie as a Christian. But my uncle was living that inconvenient truth. And I said that. I got home from work that day and I sat on the bed and I thought, oh my God, what's happened? I don't want to be Muslim. I do not want to be. I never wanted to be Muslim.
But then why did you start praying?
Because I wanted the connection.
Connection to God. Okay.
And I thought that the closest place I can get it from a logical perspective was as a Muslim, because I'd given up Christianity. But I was like, well, at least Islam was the mature version of Christianity. I felt it was more mature.
Okay.
It didn't have the fluff. It was the basic religion, if at least the closest to it. So I sat on my bed and I thought, well, I'm at a impasse now. I can either pretend like nothing happened because no one knows. My parents are not there. Like my dad's not religious. My mom's passed away. No one really cares. I can pretend like nothing happened and just continue with my life. But that's the convenient lie. And the truth is, I've already found that there is a lot of truth in this. And I kid you not, I think I literally heard a voice in my head saying, you promised yourself to always choose the inconvenient truth over the convenient lie. What are you going to do now? And I remember, I don't even know if it was to Allah or to my own brain, and I was going bipolar and I was speaking to myself. I don't know. But I remember thinking, ooh, touche. Good. Oh, you got me there. You got me there. And I said, well, what am I going to do now? Do I stick to my promise? Or do I walk away from it, and how am I going to face myself then? And I'm talking about a 21, 22-year-old at this stage. And I said, no, I have to stick to my promise. I have to stick to the inconvenient truth wherever it is. And I can't say Islam doesn't have the truth. I cannot. It doesn't make sense to say it doesn't have the truth logically, historically, academically, everything fits. Now, in my research into Islam, one of the first places I started looking was the Prophet's life, right? Because I thought that'll be the easiest place to disprove Islam, right? If he was as people say, a womanizer and a warlord and all that, easy, right? That's the best place to start. Instead of trying to figure out the Quran, let me start there.
Yeah.
The more I read into his life, the more I realized what an amazing man he was. I found this app. It was a little brown app on my phone. And I just searched for Prophet Muhammad, I think, and it was a biography. Kid you not, I can never find it again. I've tried so many times to find that app, and I've never found it since. And it had these stories of the Prophet, but it had him in a way that brought him out as a human being, not this mythical person.
Yeah.
He had things like, he would wear a shirt one day, and someone said, I like your shirt, oh Prophet. And he'd say, don't go anywhere, stay there. And he'd run home, wash it, try to dry it as fast as he could, fold it, bring it back and give it. And I thought that's beautiful.
Well, you know what? I've heard a similar story, like rich Arab people, where someone has said to an Arab guy, oh, I really like your watch, really nice. And the guy goes,
take it,
you take it, it's yours.
Yeah.
No, you have it. If you like it, it's yours.
But it comes from that.
Yes,
it comes
exactly.
from the Prophet.
Yeah.
There's times where he'd be holding a child and the time to prayer would come and he would go into sujood, but he'd do it so quickly because he didn't want discomfort on the child.
Yeah.
It was these little things, and I was like, he's a really nice person. I mean, a really nice person. And by that stage, I got to a point where I thought, I'm up for debating whether he was a prophet or not. I'll give you that, right? You can debate backwards and forwards if you
Yeah.
It's hard to say he wasn't given I'll give you that. But I'm not up for debating whether he was a warmonger or a womanizer. I'm not.
Okay.
Because he, as a person, if you genuinely...
Warmonger-wise, though, I do hear that argument a lot from people. We know of the many battles that happen and things like that, and a lot of Muslims understand the context. Some don't, but a lot of Muslim haters, I suppose, Islamophobes or whatever, will use that as a way to attack Islam and attack Muslims. So what's your response to them in regards to that?
If you're going to pick and choose pieces from anywhere without actually going through it and properly looking at it, if you have a passion, obviously you have a passion because you're going out of your way to offend someone and upset someone. So if you have that passion, put your money where your mouth is and actually read it. Read the biography from the beginning to an end, a proper biography, not one that's written by someone else who thinks exactly like you, but a proper biography written by a Muslim, or if not, even an unbiased, proper academic
I think there
scholar.
are some, especially there are plenty of biographies or stories written by British historians in the 1600s up to the 1800s.
There is Leslie Hazelton, Karen Armstrong. These are modern
ones, but there's old ones as well. A lot of them were written during the period when Britain controlled India. So obviously, a lot of them had to learn. They had to learn about Islam.
And people who did, take Bernard Shaw, the famous author. I again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Bernard Shaw said that if the Prophet Muhammad was alive today, he would solve all the world's problems over a cup of tea.
Right? I haven't heard that. I have to look that up. But that would be wonderful.
He wasn't a Muslim. He just read the biography. So if you have a passion, you have enough of a passion to offend people, use that passion to actually read it then, right? And this is where I said, well, if you read his story, it's really, really hard to say he was a warmonger or a womanizer or anything else. Yeah. You can't. You just can't. He was genuinely a good person that loved everyone that he came across. And every action, everything that happened as a head of state, and only after he'd given everyone the opportunity he could to the max to avoid anything bad from happening.
The womanizer point, that's something that comes up a lot as well. For our non-Muslim listeners and viewers out there, can you maybe give some examples of why that isn't the case as well?
Well, when the Prophet...
Because they say he had, because the number of wives that he had, it was obvious, so that's the argument that gets thrown at him to, drag his name through the dirt. As Muslims, obviously, we all hate that. So let's
there's many ways you can view this, right? There's many ways, but let's start with a couple. First of all, historically, when the Prophet ﷺ got married for the first time, he married someone much, much older than him, right? And he was married to that one person throughout the life of that one person. Khadija, we're talking about.
Yep.
Throughout the life of Khadija, he never married anyone else. And he was madly in love with Khadija, and Khadija was madly in love with him. It was a perfect romance story, right? And when Khadija died, he was heartbroken. And even many, many, many years after, even after marrying the other wives, he always had a special place in his heart for Khadija. At that time when he's in his youth, when he was, the most sexually active, let's say, that would make sense for him to marry someone younger or to have multiple wives. He never did.
No.
It was always him and Khadija throughout that time. When did he start marrying several wives? Is when he became a head of state. And every single wife, if you looked at the reasoning, there was a reason. Either a political reason or a religious reason. That said, even with political reasons, he still treated his wives beautifully and he loved them and he treated them very, very well.
I just want to interject here. I'm sure my friend won't mind me sharing the story, but a friend of mine, his wife would give had a lot of complaints about him and would give the example of the Prophet. The Prophet behaved like this with his wives and it's like that. And he just went off and said, excuse me, how are you comparing me to the Prophet? You want me to live to that example? I can't. It's not possible. I'm a normal person. I'm not a prophet of God that you want me to do that. I just thought that was pretty funny.
I've heard this.
Yeah, story. Literally, women, some women can be a bit unreasonable with their demands. It's like, I'll buy you that handbag, but do not expect me to behave like the last prophet of God. That's an unreasonable expectation.
And I've heard the flip side of this, where a man once was telling his wife, oh, Khadija did this and Khadija was that. And he said, yeah, sure, Khadija was that, but are you the prophet?
Yeah.
Right? You start being like the prophet and I'll try to be like Khadija.
Yeah.
We have to be a bit logical here.
Yeah.
But, a side note, and this is something I really love. Do you know how many times the Prophet and Aisha had fights? Actual fights?
Well, it's quite common.
Oh.
Yeah, all the time.
There was fights to the point where the Prophet ﷺ left the house and lived with one of the Sahabas for several weeks.
I think one of Aisha's grievances was that she could never live up to Khadija in the eyes of the Prophet. That was one of her grievances.
She was also very jealous of Sophia.
Yes.
And as amazing as Aisha was, what happened, those fights had to happen because that's where we learn. You see the Prophet, the other thing with the Prophet and why we have a Prophet is not so, like I said, this mythical being that comes in and suddenly, you have a role model. That's part of it. True, he is a role model. But what does a role model, if they can't live the life you've lived, isn't a very good role model. The Prophet ﷺ lived the life that every one of us lived. If you look at his story, he has gone through almost any hardship you can think of. Almost any.
Yep.
Poverty, abuse, persecution, death of a loved one, loss of things that he held dear, loss of respect, miscarriages, death of children, death of wives, death of parents, death of his guardian. I mean, that man went through a lot.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself why? Why did he have to go through that? Because Allah needed him to go through that because we can have examples from his life. Even little as fighting with your wife. That had to happen for us. When I teach the seerah, I always start by saying, who's the most important person in this seerah? In the seerah, who is the most important person?
The seerah, just the
seerah is the name given to the biography of the Prophet. The Arabic version of biography of the Prophet. It comes from the word sirat, which means the path. Who's the most important person? And they always say, oh, it's biography of the Prophet then. I said, no, you are. Everything from the birth of the Prophet to his death and beyond happened so that you can take examples. That's how much Allah loved you. And every hardship and every pain that the Prophet went through had to happen so that you have something to rely on and can relate to and learn from. That's how much the Prophet and Allah loved you. So you're always the important person in that seerah. And when you think of all the hardships he went through a lot. And he went through a lot for you. So the next time when you feel like you don't know what to do and you feel lost, think of the time when the Prophet's, the revelation stopped and he didn't know what to do and he felt so depressed that he almost wanted to throw himself off a cliff. He almost got suicidal. So for everyone out there who's thinking they're getting suicidal, you've got an example there. For the times when people you loved and trusted turned on you, the Prophet went through that. Or his own uncle turned on him. He had no one. The times when you lost someone you loved, think of Khadija passing away and Abu Talib and the year of sorrow for him. Think of whenever you have a car accident and you lose something, and you're like, I love this car. How could that happen? The Prophet lost everything. He literally had the clothes on his back when he left to Medina. Had nothing else. He went through every hardship so that you can look for an example in that and find some comfort. So the seerah is actually all about you, not about the Prophet, in my opinion. But anyway, we've gone off topic a bit. And this is where I got the love for the Prophet, right? In looking into him. When you look at the seerah, a lot of Sahaba become Muslim for different reasons. Some because they hear the Quran, like Umar radiallahu anhu, they hear the Quran and they fall in love with it. Some because of the Prophet, his personality. Other people because of the Sahaba and how the other Sahaba behaved or how they treated the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's the same story now. If you talk to different converts, they'll all have a different reason. Very similar in a lot of aspects, but they have different reasons. For me, it wasn't the Quran. I got the Quran and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. It was beautiful. There was a beauty in it. But like I said, I was looking like Surah Baqarah, camel. Where's the camel? There's no camel in this.
Yeah.
Right? I was trying to read it like the Bible. But when I read the Prophet now, there was something I could relate to.
Yep.
There was a man that at the end of reading his book, I was like, he actually loved me. He never met me, but he loved me. And one of the stories, I don't know if we have time for this short side story.
Yeah.
Is this is my favorite story, and I normally tear up when I say it. I don't know if you've heard of it when he went to Jannat al-Baqi. This was a few days before he passed away. He goes to the grave of where all the Sahaba are buried. And he goes with some of his Sahaba. And as he's walking back, he stops in his tracks and he starts to cry. And the Sahaba look at him and they're thinking, well, we visited the grave. He must be thinking about all the Sahaba that's passed away. And he's crying. He's full on crying. His beard's wet. Yeah. And they say, Ya Rasulullah, don't worry, we're still here. And he says, I miss my brothers. And the Sahaba said, we're your brothers. We're here. Don't worry. And he says, no, you're my companions. I miss my brothers. And the Sahaba is thinking he's talking about the people in the grave. But then he clarifies and he says, my brothers are the ones who will hear my message and believe in me but never see me.
Wow.
This is so, by this time, he already knew he's going to die.
Yeah.
There's a lot of signs that came up and you read the story. He knew.
Yeah, he knew.
Of everything in this world, the one thing that he cried and missed about and almost regretted leaving to be with his Lord was us.
Yeah, it was people who would...
That he wouldn't get to see us.
Yeah.
Not the great Sahaba.
Yeah.
He had his time with them. Not his wives. Not the entire empire, pretty much, of a community that created. None of that. The only regret on this dunya that he had was he couldn't meet you. Right? That hits home.
Yeah.
That hits home, and you really ask yourself, wow, am I really worth that? Am I really worth the tears the time and the tears he shed just before he died? I really don't feel like I'm worth it. But this gives you an example of the type of personality he was and the character he was. Anyway, so this is where I was drawn to Islam in his nature, and this is why I teach Seerah. But when I sat on that bed, I remember that promise I made to myself. And I said the Shahada to myself on that bed. And a few hours later, I called up one of the few Muslim friends I had in Australia. And I said, hey, I think this was a Wednesday. I said, this Friday, what are you doing? Yeah. I said, this Friday, we have this thing called Jummah. I'm going to be there. I'm like, yeah, that thing. I want to come to that thing. Yeah. He's like, that's mainly for Muslims. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a Muslim. And he went, what? Yeah. And I remember just taking the phone away from my ear. And he said, when did this happen? Yeah. And I kind of gave him a brief story.
Oh, wow.
And I rocked up to Jummah, and that was the first of many. Jummah, I didn't know why people were pushing me around to get into straight lines. So I was like, wow, you're so rude.
It can be a little bit. Yeah.
And then Ramadan happened almost a month after. Yeah. And God, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what time to break the fast. I was waiting till like pitch darkness because I'm like, I don't know. Someone said, let's go to Taraweeh. I thought Taraweeh was like another iftar. Yeah. So I'm like rocking up to the mosque expecting food. Yeah. And the prayers is going on and on and on. So like, I'm fumbling around. Yeah. But it was one of the best times of my life. Yeah. I remember when I would pray, I would look forward to the next prayer. I would count how many more hours was left.
Yeah.
I was excited.
Yeah. So it wasn't just a chore for you like it is.
No.
I think that's the difference. A lot of people who are born Muslims and they pray because they have to. They're just told this is what you do and you have no choice about it, you know? And that's the stories. That's why your story of how everyone is a convert at some point kind of makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because at some point you decide you want to do this for yourself, not because your parents are telling you to do it.
But you know what? I don't feel that anymore. And I haven't felt that sort of excitement in a long time. And I asked once a scholar, and I said, why? Why don't I feel that? I wish I felt that.
Yeah.
And he said, it's because when it's a baby, parents give them lollipops and things when they do something good. But as they grow, you don't give them lollipops and sweets and toys. Allah doesn't want you to have that feeling anymore because He wants you to pray for Him, not for the feeling.
Yep.
If it was a feeling, then you're making the feeling the priority, not obeying Allah.
Yes.
He has to take that away from you.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone out there who's thinking, oh, I wish I felt that way. Yeah, it's great. It's a great feeling. But there's a reason why you don't feel
Yeah.
that way.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's very good.
You're actually
Yeah.
doing
You
it
have
now.
to, you know, there is a power, I suppose, in rituals or ritualistic performance, something for the sake of God, you know, why are you doing this? Because we are commanded to. What's the reason? It doesn't matter, you know.
And it's not even a command of fear. You do it because you love them.
Yeah.
It's the same as with your parents. Your parents tell you something.
listen.
Sometimes you do it for fear, but most of the time you do it because you love them. You do not want to disappoint them. And this is where that kind of love. And I think another area we could really build up on is, as Muslims, we have so many rules and we've been told do this and do that. And that's good and that's right. But where is the love? Where is your love for the Prophet? Where is your love for Allah? If you don't have this sense of love, I think you've got to learn more about the person you're supposed to love. You can't love someone you don't know. I always say sometimes some of the Muslim kids, they know more about Santa Claus, who does not even exist and is not even part of our religion.
Yeah.
They know more about Santa than they know about the Prophet.
Yeah, I think that's a shortcoming in teaching about Islam, especially in places like Australia. A lot of kids are taught, how to read Arabic,
Yes.
how to pray, how to do this. They're not really taught much else.
Yes.
It's difficult though, you know. There are like the mosques run classes and things like that, but sometimes, you know, they're on a weekend and kids have got other things going on and people are away, and I don't know. It's very difficult. There needs to be. I don't know how. I don't have the solution to this.
So I agree.
Yeah.
So many kids, you know, they parrot the Quran without actually knowing any meaning.
I mean, hell, I didn't know the meaning of anything until I was like 19, 20. You know, I was like, what the hell am I doing? You know, and then I was like, oh, okay.
I get this question a lot of when someone becomes Muslim. What Quran should I give them? And I said, don't give them a Quran right now. Give them a good seerah book, easy to read seerah. Then tafsir. Then get into the Arabic.
Yeah.
Right? First seerah, then tafsir, and then Arabic. Work through that, because by then you've already created this love for the Prophet and for Allah. And I think, you're right. You know, you think about it, there's many, many people who can teach the Quran. Alhamdulillah, it's a great thing. But even to find someone who can teach the seerah is not easy.
No.
And that's a real shortcoming. In my opinion, from the age of 5, kids should be told the stories of the Prophet, of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at a very basic level, but they need to grow up with these stories.
Yeah.
Bedtime stories are great. That's the best time. That's when I teach my son. Use that time to talk about the Prophet, the different parts from the Prophet's lives. Get a good kid seerah and teach them about it so that they...
Is there one you can recommend? This has inspired me now as well. I'm like, I need to...
For adults?
No, for kids.
For kids. Look, to be honest, I think that's something, there's a shortcoming there.
Yeah.
Because I have not found a really good kid seerah book. I've got a few seerah books at home, and I find that a lot of those seerah books start off with kids, but they use it. You can see that they've taken it directly from adults' books.
Yeah.
And they've used adult terminologies, and it's too dead.
I mean, you could probably use AI to feed it an adult seerah and be like, turn this into explain.
But you know
like
what?
I'm
If
5.
someone's listening out there, maybe this was a hobby that I've been wanting to do. Make a short, really good seerah that
or bedtime stories that you can read.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the kids. I'm sure there are many books, but I haven't found one that I can recommend. For adults, yes, I would recommend Martin Ling personally. Martin Ling's seerah.
Yeah.
It's the easiest to read. It gets everything.
It's Martin L-I-N-G. Okay.
Martin Ling. He's a convert.
Oh, he's the mathematician you mentioned earlier.
No, that's Martin Lang.
Oh, Lang. Okay. This is Martin
Ling.
Ling, Martinling.
It's a green book.
Okay.
Very well-known Sirah book. The only thing I don't like about it is that when he uses quotes, he uses Old English to distinguish that between that and the story, like the quotations of people, but not a biggie. But it's a good book to read. I'd recommend that. There's many other Sirah books out there. Revelations is a really good book by Dr. Miraj Muhyiddin. If you really want to study Sirah, to get into a proper course and study, it's like a textbook. It's got graphs and charts and really good. But listen, as a Muslim, every Muslim, in my opinion, should have read a Sirah from cover to cover, or listened to a Sirah or an audio or whatever, or done a course. You cannot appreciate Islam if you cannot appreciate and love the Prophet, and you cannot appreciate and love the Prophet if you don't know him. It's just common sense 101.
Yeah.
And going back to the thing about the basics.
I suppose that's where one of the major differences between the Bible or the New Testament and the Quran is this. The New Testament are stories about Jesus.
Yes.
And that's why Christians, they love Jesus.
Yes.
That's the thing. Whereas we don't generally have that, because the Quran, we have the Hadith as well, but like the Quran being the primary text, it doesn't really talk about the life of the Prophet.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I think that's exactly it. As humans, we like to be able to imagine and to have a story, and we love good stories. That's how we've evolved, if you want to put it that way. But it's not because we lack that. We have that. We have it in the Sirah. We used to have Sirah scholars. I don't know why we lost it or where we lost it. We had a rich culture of people writing poetry about how much they love the Prophet.
Yep.
Right? Nasheeds about how much they love the Prophet. We don't have that anymore.
No.
You go to youth camps. Why do people not have poetry competitions on the Prophet anymore? Where these are aspects that we've lost.
Look, I don't want to get shot, but there's probably, or killed by assassins from any country.
At least I don't want to.
Yes. Yeah, but, I don't know, maybe I'd argue that maybe there are certain branches of Islam being spread with a lot of money that are a bit more, let's say, orthodox, or a bit more hardcore, a bit more extreme. I think that is what has been pushed in a lot of cases.
But mind you, orthodox, I'd say that's a modern concept.
Yeah.
The Orthodox Islam was a lot more. It had a fine balance of the exoteric and the esoteric.
Yeah. So orthodox is the wrong term here. I'm using orthodox, that's to mean in a negative way, I suppose. But if you look at Orthodox Islam, what the Sahaba were like, it was
when they were
internal and external.
When the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were digging the trench in Khandaq, they didn't recite Quran. They recited poetry. As they were digging and they were working in the hot sun, they were reciting poetry.
Yeah.
We have a tendency, when I say we, some people have a tendency to make everything haram.
You read my mind. I was going to call them the haram police.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people, the fun police, the haram police, everything, art, literature, and everything that is not purely Islamic is an innovation, therefore it's haram.
But what
I get it. I get it.
The Prophet ﷺ had food fights at home with his family.
Yeah.
He had races with his wife.
Yeah.
When a delegation came from Abyssinia to the Prophet ﷺ, and then they wanted to do a sword dance, one of the cultural dances, he encouraged the Sahaba to go see it, and then he took, I believe it was Fatima or Aisha, I can't remember, with him. And then because there was so much of a crowd, he put Aisha or Fatima on his shoulder so he can see it. Art, creativity is not discouraged in Islam. So, as long as it's done within parameters, right? It has to be done within parameters.
Yeah.
But we are not required to be robots. We are, again, going back to, we're required to question, we're required to be creative, we're required to bring beauty into it. Where does calligraphy come from? Where does the patterns in Islam come from? These are all out of creativity. Poetry was huge. We know this from the Sirah. I
mean, wasn't there a competition once during the time of the Prophet where one of the famous poets at the time was asked to make a poem making fun of the Prophet, and he couldn't do it. He started to, and there's nothing I can say about this guy. Yeah.
But see, like, if we're talking about traditional Islam and everything, this is traditional Islam, and why have we lost these aspects of it?
I don't know. Look, there are some factions out there who are just, I don't know. I don't know how to articulate this. I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
There's I mean, maybe you can articulate it better than me. What am I trying to say?
I think it's the pendulum issue, right? At some point in Islam, some people started going beyond the parameters. They started merging Hindu traits and different things with Islam. And there was a real risk in some aspects of Islam getting diluted. So the pendulum swung one way.
Yep.
And they said, this is the parameters. This is the haram. This is the halal. This is what it has to be. But I think the pendulum swung too far in one way.
Yeah.
And we've lost the other aspects, the esoteric aspects of Islam. There is the love for the Prophet, the love for Allah. And it's coming back. Mind you, I think it's changing. I think a lot of scholars are talking about the love and the affection and connecting with with the Prophet and Allah. It's coming back. But I think our parents or maybe our grandparents' generation, it did swing too far in one direction. And it all became haram and halal.
Yeah.
And very few things became halal. And even things that are halal, people started turning into haram.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a fiqh scholar. I'm not going to get into what's haram and halal. But I think it came as a result of fear that Islam was getting distorted. I think it came from a good place, but as a lot of things, what's the saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
I think sometimes this tends to happen. We're humans, it tends to happen. But it's for us, the current generation, to now really look at the situation as it is and understand and bring back that beauty of Islam and bring back the love of the Prophet, the stories and the poetry and that beautiful aspect of it. That's all I've got.
Wow. Quick question. I'm an atheist. I'm not, but let's just say I am. And you got 5 minutes to convince me that Islam is real. What would you say? How would you start? If you had 5 minutes, how would you start, or what would you tell the person? Assuming they're open to it, because some atheists are just not open to it, open to anything at all. But how would you convince them?
Every person is different, and every person, why they're atheist, would be different. But I will assume that you're an atheist the way I was an atheist.
Yep.
And I'll tell you how my mind worked for myself. Do you know the term jurisprudence?
Yes.
Yeah, jurisprudence is the philosophy of law, right? This is the first unit when I'm a lawyer. When I did law in uni, the first unit I did was jurisprudence. In jurisprudence, there's a concept called the veil of ignorance. And the veil of ignorance says it's a methodology to try and help understand the primordial way a human would interpret legislation, right? So what it says is if you take a child who's never had any cultural, religious, other human influence, and he grows up, which is impossible, but let's hypothetically grows up, how would he interpret a particular piece of law if he was under the veil of ignorance, quote unquote? So does that make sense? If they were completely put on a veil, had no other external influence, how would he see a piece of law? Now, I thought, let's use that for religion. If a person, a human, was put under a veil of ignorance, no influence from their parents, no cultural influence, no religious influence, and someone said to him, describe a religion, a purely man-made religion, or something you created, just create something. How would it look like? And I thought, you know what? It would probably look like Hinduism. No offense to any Hindus watching this is my perspective. It would look like Hinduism. Or it would look like the Greek pantheon. Or it would look like the Roman pantheon. A lot of stories, similarities. Humans, gods are like humans. They're everywhere. They're not all-knowing. They're not all intelligent. But that's how I think a primordial human would create. Now you tell them, create a religion that is comfortable for you, but has some truth. And I thought, well, they'd probably create Christianity. There's a God, there's rules, but it's pretty soft touch rules, and the rules are permeable. And you do a lot of things that you feel good about. It's all about feelings and emotions and how it makes you feel, and miracles and the fun stuff. And then I went from there and I thought, well, if someone like that was told, well, what would be the true religion that has no creation, no human aspect in it? It would probably look like Islam, because a human would not create Islam as a religion. Why would you? There's too many rules. There's too many regulations. Why would any human want to...
Really, are there that many rules if you think about it? Well, the rules all seem rules that are necessy for a functioning society.
I say too many. I shouldn't say too many. But
yeah.
But it's rules that
I mean, humans would have created a religion. If it was a man-made religion, and you'd make it compulsory for every man to have 20 wives,
right.
and
you'd make it like the Greek pantheon.
Yeah,
so
you'd make it like all about partying,
right?
and this is our religion, you know.
And if you really wanted to find a bit of a middle ground, you still want to party but have a bit of rules, you make it Christianity.
Yeah, maybe like the Rastafarians,
right?
smoke some weed and enjoy life. Yeah.
Why would you make it Islam then?
Yeah.
Why? Because Islam requires you to control your basic urges. We fast. One of our key basic urges as an animal or a human is to eat.
Yeah.
To avoid fornication, to not put yourself before others sometimes. It's not in human nature to do that. So then where did this religion come from? Right? That's what got me over the line of atheism. That's where I thought, wow, okay, wait, if this didn't come from a human mind, because it wouldn't come from a human mind, because no human would put themselves in this situation, they'd probably create a different religion, which is much more easier for them. Where'd it come from? Now that's my thinking.
Yeah, okay. And then you'd probably, if the atheist was truly being honest with you and not being intellectually disingenuous, they would probably have to go and research that more, and that may lead them down the path. Yeah, I think a lot of atheists also that they're trolling you, basically. They're trying to catch you out. You know, I think that's the pastime of a lot of atheists is debating. They enjoy. I think they enjoy the debating, which is fine. You know, it's fun. It's fun.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
As an atheist, I told you,
Yeah.
I'd go up to the stalls and annoy the hell out of the Muslim Association, right, and the Christian Association, and any other association that had anything to do with religion.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but it was an outlet for my inner frustration and anger. Am I saying all atheists are like that? I don't know.
No.
But I'm sure there's many who
I think the majority of atheists are agnostic. They just call themselves atheists. They can't be bothered, and I get that as well. Life is difficult enough sometimes without trying to worry about the meaning of life and God and the Creator and the universe and life after death. It can be.
And I think for a lot of people, it's the guilt also. You know, we live a life sometimes when we do things that we're not proud of. And it doesn't help when there's a religion saying that you should be feeling guilty. We don't like the feeling of guilt. No. We try to, as humans, we run from that.
Yeah.
And the only way you can run from, there's two ways you can run from that. One is to stop doing the wrong and deal with it, or convince yourself it's not wrong. And for a lot of people, the latter is easier to do.
Right? The argument that I see online as well from a lot of atheists is that they don't need religion to teach them morality or the difference between right and wrong. There's an innate sense of morality. What are your thoughts on that?
Morality has changed through history many times over. Where is then the litmus test for morality? Who gets to say what's moral and what's not? Well, you can say, well, we have the basics. Killing a person is immoral. Sure.
But
human sacrifice happened all over history.
That's what Spain, when they,
right?
Yeah.
Or stealing is immoral. Well, I tried telling that to the colonizers who came and took all the land from indigenous people. Morality changes. And if morality changes, then what is human morality? There has to be a standard.
Slavery existed, was the norm for many years.
Right?
Yes, it's changed. The standard has changed.
Where is the standard then? Who put the standard? You, me, a king, an emperor? Who? As a humanity as a whole, it has to be someone greater than the humanity. Only someone greater can put a standard for us. So, sure, according to today's society, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of atheists are doing what's right and wrong and avoiding what's wrong, right? Sure. Not saying that's not. But if you want to understand what is right and wrong, like really understand what's right and wrong, you need a litmus test that goes beyond the individual human mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that does. We need to get you back on, I think.
I'm not sure what the time is.
We're going to have to get you back on, I think, and have you debate with an atheist. That would be an absolutely killer podcast, I think.
I'm not sure how I feel about debating.
No. Let's not use the word debate. Have a discussion, either with an atheist or a Christian. I should perhaps get you to have a discussion with my friend James, because he's a quite a devout Catholic, but he's also, I'm Muslim and I'm his best friend, so he understands and he spends a lot of time in the Middle East. He spent many years in Saudi Arabia as well, so he understands the culture and the religion there as well. But we'll have to. I think we have to get you back on for part 2. Yeah,
play it by ear and we'll see where we go from there.
Shan, thank you so much.
No, not a problem at all. So thank you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Mate.